Welcome to the Beyond the Years podcast, a podcast about all things Disney.
You're listening to episode 11. Today we're going to be recapping episode 5 and episode 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because we're going to be talking about both episodes, we will timestamp episode 6 in the description below for you. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about episode 6 since it's more fresh. But since we have a lot to cover today, we're going to go ahead and get started with the details. So episode 5, we had a lot kind of come to light. So one of the things that happened at the beginning of the episode was that Reva was granted Grand Inquisitor by Vader. So that was a huge turning point for her. And then we quickly realize that she is actually the youngling from Order 66. And she is trying to basically hunt Vader instead of working for him. So she's trying to get as close to him as possible, prove herself, and then eventually get close enough to kill him or to make him suffer.
Yeah. I do remember that part.
Yeah.
Because they're doing this on the water planet, wherever their Inquisitor base is located at.
Yeah, because episode 4 ended with Reva having put a tracker on Obi-Wan's ship.
Mm-hmm.
And so they obviously tracked them down. They found them. Obi-Wan was aware that, they had been discovered and they needed to do some repairs on the ship. So they basically had to stall. And then Reva and Obi-Wan have a dialogue together where he basically realizes that she was one of the younglings in Order 66 that Anakin, he slaughtered a whole bunch of younglings, and he actually stabbed her, and she survived.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got this whole internal issue where, she watched all of her loved ones be murdered by him, be slaughtered. And ever since then, her entire journey has been trying to get close to Vader, close enough to basically destroy him. So becoming the Grand Inquisitor really gave her the opportunity to get as close as she needed to. She's proven herself over and over, and especially being able to track down Obi-Wan in this episode. She was able to get pretty close to Vader.
Yeah.
And then in this dialogue between Obi-Wan and Reva, he kind of says, let's work together. I think that, I think we would be able to destroy him, stop him, whatever, if we work together. And then he kind of convinces her that's what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. Now is the time. And so he kind of goes back to the rest of the group, and they get kind of swarmed by a whole bunch of stormtroopers. And then Tala and her robot friend end up getting shot quite a few times. I thought that was a really heartbreaking scene with her droid.
Yeah.
She had already been shot, but he stepped in front of her to kind of take the brunt. And then
she pulled out a detonator.
Yeah, she pulled out a detonator and basically sacrificed herself so that Obi-Wan could escape. And that obviously was a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, especially because I think Obi-Wan really connected with Tala.
Yeah.
And what she was doing, because we had gotten a whole episode of him and Tala together, and that she was once an Imperial officer, and now she's helping all these people escape, and Jedi and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty even though it's a short-lived little relationship between the two, it's a very like you said, heartbreaking.
Yeah,
heartbreaking moment.
I was pretty surprised that they killed her off, because I thought she was going to be in the rest of the show. So that was a really sad moment, but it did give Obi-Wan the time he needed to get back to everyone else in the group. And, Leia had the time she needed to get everything going. She was the one who got the power back on to get the ship.
Yeah, the doors the blast doors open.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Because she found Lola, and she realized that Lola was like corrupted by the Empire.
Yeah. Yeah, so Leia kind of saves the day, gets the blast doors open. They're able to escape, but right before they escape, Vader shows up. And he has this crazy powerful scene where he uses the Force to pull down the ship. And that blew my mind because I haven't seen, apparently it's been in other
games and
other things.
Yeah, it's canon that he's like that Force strong, but live action, I don't think we've really seen it.
Yeah, I haven't. So it was crazy to see him kind of pulling the ship out of the air, and then he was actually able to like pull it down to the ground, and he started literally like ripping it apart with the Force.
Yeah.
And then the vessel that was inside of the ship shot off into space, and he was too slow to catch it. But it was still...
I think it was a dummy ship. I think there was 2 different ships.
I can't remember what exactly it's called, but yeah, it was like a ship within a ship. That display of power was insane. Like, this was a really... I mean, 6 was a crazy episode, which we'll get to, but 5 was a huge display for Vader, like his power in the Force. So he like rips the outer ship to shreds with the Force, and then they kind of shoot off, and he's frustrated, obviously, but he doesn't have very much time to wallow because Reva shows up and is going to try and kill him.
Yeah.
But he knew immediately.
And he said he's known the whole time.
Yeah, he freaking... That was so crazy. Like, we get flashbacks of Anakin, and like when he's slaughtering all of the younglings, and we see him stab Reva, and he remembered her from Order 66.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I guess he must have known this entire time, or maybe since she like tried to kill the other Grand Inquisitor. I'm not sure when he made that connection, or if he's just known that entire time.
I thought he said he knew. Like, do you think I'm a fool? I've known this whole time, or something like that.
I can't remember exactly what was said, but she shows up, tries to catch him off guard. She really doesn't catch him off guard because he's really in tune with the Force. They have an epic fight scene where he doesn't even have his lightsaber. He's just basically fighting her with the Force.
Yeah.
And I was like blown away at that scene where he's doing all of these movements with his hands. She's like obviously swinging the lightsaber, trying to
he doesn't use his lightsaber like once hardly.
I know, and he just uses his hands.
Yeah.
And the way that the way they filmed this with the angles, and it's like they kind of like would do like a slow quick shot, and then you would go to a different shot, and it was just like the way they filmed it was amazing. And I just thought it was an amazing display of his power when he was fighting her off. She had the lightsaber and he didn't have anything, and it was just crazy, the power. And then he eventually gets her double-edged lightsaber, breaks it in half, and then tosses one of them to her. And then very quickly after that, he ends up stabbing her the same way that he did in Order 66.
Yeah. Is this the episode that we got the flashbacks from young Anakin and Obi-Wan?
Yeah, I think so. Right?
I don't know. But what I was going to say was, you can just tell that Vader has to be more in tune with the Force now, because, I mean, all he has left really is his mind. His body's not there. So he's not as good as a saber fighter like he used to be when he's fighting Obi-Wan in those flashbacks. So anytime he uses a saber, it's like very slow, and like they're like power hits. Like he like slashes really hard.
Yeah.
It's not like a fluent, like especially in episode 6, their big fight scene. Vader is just, his saber skills are not what they used to be compared to when he was just Anakin, compared to like Obi-Wan or Reva.
Yeah. So he definitely has to rely on his ability to use the Force. So, okay. Yeah, that's like a huge part that we're kind of missing out on in episode 5 is we got a lot of those flashbacks where it was like pre-Clone Wars, I believe.
Yeah.
And we see these moments between Obi-Wan and Anakin where they're training together, and we can see that Anakin is, again, easily frustrated. He can't see long term. He just sees like the impact of what he does now. He's got no patience. And Obi-Wan, of course, is like trying to teach him all of these lessons, and
a lot of good Obi-Wan quotes.
And throughout this episode, the flashbacks parallel how they're feeling in real time. There's not too much to say about that hasn't already been said, but there's a lot of flashbacks that parallel. The flashbacks were really cool. They did some de-aging on the actors. I feel like they could have done more de-aging, but it was just cool to see them.
Yeah, and I mean, Hayden Christensen hasn't aged like that bad compared to what he used to look like. I mean, he's definitely aged a little bit, but
yeah,
they both haven't aged horribly. So it didn't take a lot to de-age them.
Yeah. Anyway, so we get those flashback scenes that parallel what's going on in the present, and then going back to the fight with Reva and Darth Vader where he stabs her while she's kind of laying on the ground. The Grand Inquisitor walks up and has to give some sass, and basically he's like, I'm the true Grand Inquisitor and you're just trash or garbage or whatever. We're going to leave you here.
Yep.
Which I thought that guy was like super annoying, but obviously he did a good job acting because that's the whole point. He's supposed to be annoying. So then we move on to Obi-Wan. There's not a ton else that really happens in this episode. They get back.
They get on that ship, and then they're just flying in
like
the ship.
Traveling, and they realize that the light speed isn't gonna work.
Yep.
And so we kind of end episode 5 with them realizing that they're not gonna be able to travel in hyperspeed or light speed, whatever.
Yeah.
And that Vader's ship is going to quickly catch up with them.
Yeah, and one other thing before we jump to episode 6, that Reva finds this puck.
Oh, yeah.
The puck on the ground.
Important detail.
And it's Owen. I think it's Owen. Or it's Leia.
Organa.
Oh yeah, Leia's dad.
Yeah.
And he says, I hope you find the kids. And then she realizes that, like, oh, these are, I don't know how she realized that they're Vader's kids, but she puts 2 and 2 together and she goes to Tatooine.
Yeah.
So.
And we don't know exactly what her plan was based on what we see. We think she was going to kill Luke, which is Vader's son. But we don't know what her plan was going to be after the fact, if she was going to present that to Vader and think that that was going to destroy him. We don't know how that was going to be playing out because it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, because Vader, I mean, obviously he thinks that his kids died.
I've kind of wondered that because with how connected he is to the Force, right? Like, how could you not know?
I think right now he's just in a lot of rage over Obi-Wan still.
Yeah.
And that's like, because I feel like that's one of the flashbacks was that the rage, Obi-Wan says like, your anger and rage always clouds your judgment, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What else in episode 5? That's like a very quick recap of episode 5.
We'd rather just talk about
episode 6 is crazy epic. So I guess we can go ahead and start with episode 6. Do you want to take it from here and I'll kind of chime in?
So episode 6, titled episode 6. The first like couple minutes it just pretty much picks up immediately from episode 5.
Yeah.
They are running in the spaceship as Vader's ship is like in pretty close blasting range. So they're shooting at them the whole time. They're still trying to get the hyperspeed fixed, And Roken is like, it's going to take some time, which, by the way, I love Roken, and I hope we see more of him in the future. If they continue with the show or however.
Yeah.
Wherever they go with that. I liked him as a character.
He was great.
So, Obi-Wan is pretty much like, there's no time. He doesn't want everyone here. He just wants me. Is there a ship, another, like a escape ship or escape pod? And they're like, yes. So the whole couple minutes, they're trying to figure out, what do we need to do to get this hyperspeed going? And Obi-Wan, you shouldn't sacrifice yourself.
Yeah. And then Roken kind of says, I don't think you need to do this, but I can tell that you kind of want to.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, like, I agree. I think that's true. I think he needs this to be over. Yeah. Because he needs to be at peace. He doesn't want to continue. He's lived the past 10 years with this hanging over him, just like Vader has. And he wants it to be done.
Yep.
So he's going to use just a little ship, and basically Vader sees it happen. He sees him go off. There's only one life form aboard the ship. He knows it's Obi-Wan. And then
follow Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
He's very just doesn't care. And the Grand Inquisitor is standing next to him, and he's like, shouldn't we destroy the other ship? Because to destroy the system of like Jedi and all these other people, force sensitive, like escaping through the galaxy. And Vader is just like, follow Obi-Wan.
Yeah. it's and he's like, I'm going to face him alone.
Yeah.
He wants to do it by himself.
Oh
my God. This whole episode went by so quick because I think everyone who watched it was so invested the whole time. I mean, it's hard because like this is the middle of this huge timeline and we know what happens basically. Mm-hmm. I mean, they can't kill anybody because we see them in episode 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars. So we kind of know what's eventually going to happen, but they did a really great job of filling it in for us. So you want to talk about this scene?
So we get two different scenes here. We get Reva back on Tatooine looking for Owen and Beru and Luke at this like little watering hole area. Then we get like Owen and Luke, and this other guy walks up. He's like, Owen, I gotta tell you something. He goes back and tells Beru, listen, someone's coming for Luke. We gotta hide and stand ground. So that pretty much is happening at the same time. We're getting this giant Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight, and it's like a back and forth. So we get like a couple minutes of Vader and Obi-Wan, and then a couple minutes of Reva and Owen and Beru and Luke. So we'll jump back to the Obi-Wan and Vader stuff.
Okay, you want to talk about it? You want me to?
No, you can go because you're getting excited about it. I can.
Okay, so obviously this fight scene was freaking epic. So we start off, Obi-Wan and Vader walk up to each other, and then Vader says, "Have you come to destroy me?" Isn't that what he says?
Yeah.
I can't remember what Obi-Wan says.
He says, "I'll do what I must."
Right, which is from the prequels.
Yep.
And then they go at it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, the whole like first part of this fight is a lot of lightsaber and not a lot of force yet. But it's because it's more like just rage fighting at this point.
Yeah, they're definitely getting out some energy.
Pent up aggression.
Yes, going at it pretty hard with the lightsabers. But like you said earlier, Vader is a little bit slower to move than he used to be because he has 4 prosthetic limbs. Yeah. And a breathing apparatus. So he's got a lot of injuries.
And a clunky suit.
Yeah, and he's always in pain from his injuries. So he's got a lot working against him. So he's a little bit slower.
And that's what I love about this episode is that you can tell like how slow he is compared to Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan can just like flip through his lightsaber and like spin really fast, and Vader has to like, he can't turn his head, like he's got to turn his whole like upper body to turn back. Yeah. So it's not like he can turn his head and spin. Like he's turning his whole body, which is like slowing him down a ton.
Yeah, so the first couple minutes of the fight, they're pretty evenly matched, even though Vader's a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vader kind of gains the upper hand.
Yeah, he starts using the Force a little bit more. I can't remember. Oh, Obi-Wan uses the Force first because he knocks down that like rock tower,
yep.
and Vader's like, "Your powers are back and they're strong, but you're still weak."
Yeah.
And then he throws the rocks to the side and then hits Obi-Wan with a rock.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's more lightsaber battle. And then I don't remember what Vader says, but he pretty much like puts his hand on the ground and it's like an earthquake. Like the ground just starts splitting and you're like, holy shit, what is happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a giant hole where Obi-Wan is standing, and Obi-Wan like falls down into this pit momentarily.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vader starts covering the pit up with rocks. And do you remember what he says?
I don't. I just remember before he cracked the ground, he said something about, and that's why you're always gonna lose, or that's why you'll always lose.
Yeah. Well, and I know after he covers Obi-Wan with rocks, he's like, something master, or this is why you lose, master.
I can't remember what he said.
I know he says something master.
Yeah, he called him master, but Obi-Wan is basically buried alive underneath all of these boulders and
using the Force to not get completely crushed.
Mm-hmm. And so we kind of had this back and forth between this scene and then Reva trying to kill Luke.
Mm-hmm.
So we have which is still exciting, but obviously it's not Vader versus Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Thrilling. So we have Reva. She kind of faces Owen pretty quickly. He ends up falling off this tiny little bridge thing and hurting his leg or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then Beru hits Reva and yells for Luke to run, basically get out of here. And then we just have Reva basically chasing down Luke.
Yeah. And she chases him down into like a cavern looking area, and he's just pretty much climbing and like staying above her on the rocks, but she doesn't know where he's at.
Yeah.
But he's pretty much just run and hide.
Yeah.
At this point. And that's the next like 2 scenes is pretty much that of them.
Mm-hmm.
So we get back to the Vader and Obi-Wan fight, and I'll let you continue with it.
Well, so Obi-Wan is still buried alive underneath all of these boulders and rubble, and like Josh said, he's kind of using the Force to keep from being crushed, but then we see him have all of these flashbacks of young Leia, flashbacks like Anakin talking to him, Vader talking to him. He's hearing things, and he just gets the power to basically blast through all of the rocks and all of the rubble, and then he is able to climb out of the ravine.
Yeah. And I mean, the rocks just like
Yes.
just go everywhere. And it's like a rebirth scene.
And this next part is crazy. So he gets out, and then we go to Vader, and
walking away.
He's walking away, and then he stops. And we know that he knows that Obi-Wan is right behind him, and then he turns around really quickly, and then we have another epic fight scene.
Yeah. This time Obi-Wan is definitely getting the upper hand in this whole fight, because it's like now he's fighting for Leia, he's fighting for Luke, like he's fighting for all the other like Jedi that he's lost. Like that's kind of the vibe that I get whenever he's fighting him.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at the beginning of this fight scene, he was kind of fighting with one hand tied behind his back, because to him, like, this is still Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
This is still his Padawan, and it's like he doesn't want to kill him.
Yeah.
And he's holding back. And then when he was buried under the rocks and he's having these flashes of Leia, and like that is what's important, these kids. And so he has like, he stops holding back basically.
Yeah.
Full strength. And then
he goes into like dad mode.
Yeah. Hulks out. And so then he uses the Force and kind of blasts Vader against this huge rock wall, and it knocks him down.
Oh man. And then sorry.
No, go ahead.
So then you get like a wide shot of Obi-Wan with his saber in his hand, and he puts both arms out to the side, and like these rocks, I mean hundreds of rocks, just start like lifting from the ground, and it's like a God scene moment. Like, holy crap, Obi-Wan is about to obliterate Vader with these rocks and pelt him.
Yeah, and so this was so powerful because he basically just, like Josh said, had his arms held out high, and he just had this very slight movement of his body and his arms like slightly going forward, but it's not like he was moving his arms like he was throwing individual rocks. It was just like power.
Yeah, it was all
the
force.
Rocks just going. And then they're just pelting Vader. I mean, these are huge rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're more like boulders.
Yeah.
And Vader is kind of like using the force, you said, to like slow him down a little bit, but he can't stop them. Like, there's just so many of them.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell, but you can kind of see like right before they hit Vader, they don't stop completely, but they stop slow enough just to where you can see like that when it hits him, it's not hitting him as hard, because I was like, man, there's no way a person survives this without using the force. And because he just gets pelted with like a ton of rocks.
Yeah, so he eventually kind of breaks free of that, and then they kind of just have another quick lightsaber battle. Obi-Wan quickly gets the upper hand. I think Vader like somehow like does this sort of uppercut and knocks Obi-Wan back, and then Obi-Wan comes at him really strong and basically like destroys the apparatus on the front of Vader's suit.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that's what like controls his breathing.
Yeah, it's life support, pretty much. I think that's what they call it in the.
And that scene where he's like just wailing on that is crazy, because like sparks are flying, and then you immediately get Vader like wheezing.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of sad.
Yeah. No, that's what I was going to say, is you definitely like feel for Vader a little bit in this scene.
Oh,
like obviously
yeah.
you want him to, like, obviously he's the bad guy, but like we know what he was and what he could have been. So you just feel bad. And I mean, because every time he gets hit, he's just like, and like the wheezing is so bad.
Yeah. And so he basically destroys the, like you said, life support. And then he does this quick like spin move thing, and he slices Vader's helmet in half.
Yeah, the left side of the helmet,
where we see half of his face.
Yeah.
And I about crapped my pants when that happened. I was like, oh my God. Because like I've as I talked about in previous episodes, I really wanted to see more of like Anakin Vader's face.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. And so that was a huge blow. And so he's kind of like knelt down at this point, and Obi-Wan is like, oh my gosh, he's like, Anakin. And he's got like tears in his eyes. Mm-hmm. Obi-Wan does.
Yeah.
And he's like, Anakin. And
Vader, when he talks, you hear Anakin's voice, like Hayden Christensen's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a little bit of James Earl Jones, but like it's like a mixing.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes you can hear just James Earl Jones, and other times you can hear like Anakin.
Yeah.
Like his voice. And then other times it's like mixed, like where you hear parts and like the other part you hear someone else. It's like very like clash, like, because it's like his suit is breaking practically.
Yeah. And so Obi-Wan says, Anakin, I'm so sorry for all of it. And then what did Anakin say?
He said, man, it was something along of the lines of like, Obi-Wan, you didn't fail me, or you didn't destroy Anakin. I destroyed Anakin, or something like that. But it was pretty much saying that, and I think this was like a small part of Anakin coming out and saying like, you didn't kill Anakin, I did.
I know, and then like, this part was like so heartbreaking, because I think like we have, like you talked about, where we hear Hayden Christensen's voice part of the time, and then we hear James Earl Jones, and I think it's more representative of like Vader in James Earl Jones, and then Anakin with Hayden Christensen's voice. And so,
because that's Obi-Wan's Padawan.
yeah, and so I think that, I mean, Anakin has always been very torn about his decision to go to the dark side. Like, he's so hesitant, so much of it, and then he makes a decision and it's the wrong decision, and then he has to live with it. And it's just like when he executed Order 66, it was like this momentary lapse in judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that he regretted it probably immediately, and then he's just like, well, I'm too far gone. Yeah. And so we have Anakin here saying, you didn't do this to me, I did this to me. And I think he says that so that Obi-Wan can like get closure. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, she's over there welling up right now. So not much is said after that. Obi-Wan starts to walk away, and you hear Darth just like yell, Obi-Wan! And it's like you're getting the modulated voice and Anakin voice like mixed together, but you can like really hear Anakin. And then it like it pulls back to Obi-Wan, and it's like, see you later, Darth. And he just like starts walking away. So then you get like you're like zoom out and you're like above Darth Vader, and he screams, Obi-Wan! And it's like, and it just like cuts back to Reva and like Luke.
Well, he like collapses, and then it cuts back to Reva.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just a scream.
Oh,
because it's just, I love how they mix the two voices.
That scene was just so epic. I mean, that was Ewan McGregor. Holy cow. This scene specifically, like, he's obviously a fantastic actor and he's done such a great job with this role. But this scene, like, it's the first time he has seen Anakin's face since when he was on fire.
Yeah.
So, like, I know, like, he is remembering Anakin from what he was before, but this is the first time that he gets to see the results of the injuries he sustained in their last fight. And so, like, you could see, like, the shock in his eyes at the state of Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, him just struggling to breathe. And obviously he's burned pretty severely, and he's got, the classic injuries under his eye and on his head, and we get to see that. And Ewan McGregor did just such a great job reacting to it. But anyway, we're going back to Reva chasing down Luke. She basically knocks him down.
Yeah, she like force pulls him down to the ground from this like ledge above.
Yeah, and he's like passed out essentially.
Yeah. And
this is when Obi-Wan shows up, because he can
sense that he's in danger.
He senses that there's something wrong, and he's like, Luke.
Yeah.
And then
when he says Luke, I was getting like
chills.
Well, that, and he sounded like the original Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
How he's like, Luke. And he just like zooms off. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, so he shows up on Tatooine. He sees Owen and Beru, and he's like, where's Luke? And they're like, we can't find him. We don't know where he's at. And then Reva is walking across the desert holding Luke in her arms.
Yeah, and I was like, because I had watched it first, and I was like, he's dead.
Well, like when you see that, like, that's your first instinct, but we know better because obviously all of the Star Wars movies, the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke is obviously one of the main characters, so we know he's not dead, but they did a great job of making that like a super impactful scene, even though we know he's not dead. So you didn't trick me. I knew he was not dead.
No, I know I didn't trick you. It was just funny because when I said it, you looked at me like, shut up.
So anyway, she basically lays him on the ground and just collapses to her knees.
Yeah, because and like this is another kind of, is it foreshadowing or not foreshadowing, but
flashbacks.
Well, where she like is trying not to become Vader, but she's just very confused and doesn't know what to do. She thought she failed because she didn't like avenge her fallen family pretty much, all the other children.
So Obi-Wan walks up to them, and I can't remember. I think they see Luke breathe or whatever. He moves.
Yeah, and Owen Beru get him out of there pretty quick.
And then we get this dialogue between Reva and Obi-Wan where she basically breaks down, super upset, super vulnerable, and says, have I become him? Or am I becoming him? And she thinks that she's failed all of the other younglings who died in the temple during Order 66. And he basically tells her, like you said, like you didn't disappoint them, or you've like avenged them. You brought honor to their name or whatever.
Yeah. So she's obviously just like bawling.
I loved Reva. I know initially the actress got a lot of negative feedback. I don't know why. But I think she did a fantastic job. And especially in the last couple of episodes, because she's torn like Anakin was.
Yeah.
And
she's torn for different reasons.
Well, it's different, but it's similar because Anakin initially turned to the dark side to save Padme because he was having visions of her dying in childbirth, and he was going to do anything he could to save her life. And then he just got pulled into it. And then we have Reva, who's trying to avenge all of her lost loved ones. So it's kind of a similar story.
Yeah. But so you pretty much just end with Obi-Wan and her talking, and they like stand up and they kind of go their separate ways. And I can't remember if the next scene, I don't know if we end with Darth Vader in the castle or if we end with Obi-Wan. Because we see.
No, the very last scene is Vader, but you're missing a big scene with Leia. She goes home with her parents.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
That was huge. Yeah. So Obi-Wan brings Lola back.
Yep.
Right, to Leia. Yeah. And Leia.
She's getting. You explain the getting ready scene. Because last night you were like, oh my God, she's so cute.
Well, I think the actress is adorable, and I think she did such a great job, regardless of what anyone else says. I mean, she's a kid, so I think she did fantastic. But yeah, we do have a scene where she's
suiting up.
Right after this whole event takes place, she's getting dressed. She's got her classic tall brown boots on, white outfit, and then she puts the gun holster on that was Tala's, which I thought was so perfect. And she's got her classic braided buns, or her classic buns on her hair that she did. And then her adoptive mother walks in and she's like, is that a holster? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, I love it. And then we walk outside to meet her adoptive father. And then Obi-Wan shows up with Lola. And then Leia, of course, is just extremely excited to see Obi-Wan and Lola. And then this scene is absolutely freaking heartbreaking for so many reasons. But essentially we know that... Okay, so we have a special guest who just woke up from his nap. Grayson, can you say hello to the microphone?
Say hi.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi. So we're almost done with this episode, so we'll wrap it up. But we get this dialogue between Leia and Obi-Wan, which, like I said, is heartbreaking because they basically say that they're really not going to see each other again because it would put them both in danger.
Yeah.
So we know they might not see each other again. They might, but it's not like they're going to be part of each other's lives. And then we get this super sweet moment where Obi-Wan tells Leia the amazing qualities that she got from both of her parents, which is just heartbreaking because he says all of these amazing qualities that she got from her mom, and then he says all of these amazing qualities that she got from her dad, Anakin. So that was really sad, and it made me sad that Padme was not there, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so after that scene, which, like I said, like that was so heartbreaking. I more so was heartbroken because of like the broken family dynamic, where like in a different universe, Padme and Anakin would have been raising these kids.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart. And then we end the episode with Vader sitting on a temple, basically. Like what?
Yeah,
like
and
the
his
lava planet.
Yeah, Mustafar.
Which is where the big.
That's where his base of operation is.
Right. Okay, and so then he has this dialogue with
Emperor Palpatine.
Yep.
Yeah, so he pretty much says, it's like, hey, Vader, like, Vader is, well, actually, it's Vader is screaming, like, we will search every planet in this galaxy to find Obi-Wan. And the Emperor's like,
You're singing?
and the Emperor says, he's like, I think you have a clouded judgment. There's like much bigger things to be worried about than one person. It's pretty much like what he's trying to say. And
so he's basically manipulating Vader like he has from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
When he planted those dreams of Padme.
Yeah.
Dying in childbirth. So he's been manipulating Vader this entire time, and he will continue to do so until the very end in episode 6 when Vader throws him down like a hole.
Yeah.
And kills him.
And then real quick, the very last scene of the show is Obi-Wan going to Uncle Owen.
Oh yeah.
And he gets to meet Luke for the first time, and he gives him that toy that we see Luke playing with in the New Hope movie. And Obi-Wan says his iconic "hello there" line, which was like, yeah. And yeah, so we get that iconic line, which everyone had been waiting for like the whole time, I think. And then it shows him like pretty much riding off into the sunset, and he's riding in between these two canyons, and like it fades away from him, and it like it's looking forward, and then like a blue shadow like appears, and it's Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah.
And he was like, it took you long enough. And it's
Liam
Neeson coming back as Qui-Gon Jinn. So it was great. And like I freaked out because Qui-Gon Jinn's like one of my favorite Jedi. And it was just funny. And then Obi-Wan's like, Qui-Gon, Master Qui-Gon. He's like, it took you long enough to get here. And pretty much it says like, where do I go from here? And he's like, well, we got a long way to go. And like he starts walking off, and then Obi-Wan's still riding this camel looking thing. So and then the episode just ends. So that's kind of how the show wrapped up. It was a great ending and a great show, in my opinion. It was probably one of the most Star Wars things we've got out of like the new era of Star Wars. So
yeah, so I agree with Josh. This was like, it felt like a continuation of Star Wars.
Yeah, the
like
original.
It felt like a perfect in between of the prequels and the original movies 4, 5, and 6. And I know that it was made to be a standalone show. I kind of hope that they leave it as a standalone. I know it's going to be really well received. It's got a lot of positive feedback so far. So I do hope that they kind of leave it be, honestly, because I don't know how much they could do
with a season 2.
Yeah, with a season 2, and also like in 4, it's supposed to have been a really long time since Ben and Vader have seen each other. So overall, I love the show. I agree. It was a very Star Wars feeling show. If you hear Grayson in the background, that's just toddlers.
Toddler life.
Yeah, toddlers. He took a very short nap today. A very short nap. But anyway, what do you guys think about the show? Let us know. Thank you all for listening today. Give us a rating on whatever platform you are listening to, and we will talk to you in the next one. Everyone have a good day.